Alright, it is Monday, and the weather is iffy, so we had Net 225, CIS 332, so we had database SQL, we had routing and switching, but we did not have information in computers because of the snow. So this is week 2, and it would have been day 3 for Intro to Computers. So what I'm going to do is we'll move right into Wednesday. Alright, so here we go. This is Introduction to Computers, Wednesday. And this is week 2, and then this would be day 4 for classes, even though one of the days was a snow day. Alright, so let's get started here. Today we talked about started talking about data. Actually talked about the internet at first, but we talked about data. Data in technology is stored using bits, and so I gave the example of these bits. The word bit actually comes from the term binary digit. More on that later. Binary digit. It doesn't make a difference which I you use, but it's binary digits. That's where they got the word bit. Group 8 bits together and we get a byte. Byte term is usually used for storage or amounts of data. Bits is usually used for speed. Bits per second. How many bits per second travel between two locations? Storage, how many bytes is your hard drive? How many bytes of memory? This code right here is the ASCII code, and that right there happens to be a capital A. We're going to look at some examples of that later on. So, we can look at this. We have data, and we process data into information, and we use software to process it using computers. And this will become normal. We'll talk about that. Huge amounts of data nowadays stored. Okay? A couple other things we talked about. This wasn't the exact order we covered it in class, but we talked about the outlines. Work on the outline and online research. We listed some of the key things. Current, lots of options. You get multiple options for the same piece of information, so you can better learn it. You'll hear me use, you can maybe go in a little more deep learning. You know, trying to understand rather than just trying to just know it, okay? Rather than just remember it. You try to understand it so then later on you can apply it. I'll talk more about that later. Textbooks are expensive. Even textbooks may not be all correct. Textbooks on technology are not really exciting to read. And even though there's some advantages to textbooks, since this is a tech class, it also makes sense to study these items using computers. Next thing we talked about were files. Okay, most of the students were familiar with files. Oops, let me back up here. You have folders and then subfolders, and you have this file hierarchy where you organize files. What kind of files are there? We have software files, the actual programs, you know, the applications you run, and the applications work with data files. Okay, so we did an example like you might look at a file, a DOC file, You have dot, some name of a file with the extension DOC or maybe DOCX. These are Microsoft Word files. Okay, so the software, Microsoft Word, works with these kind of files. So if you have a docc file, docc for an extension, docx, then you really need that application that works with the file. We did another example. We looked at a PDF. If you have a PDF file, then you need Adobe Reader to read the file. Or there's other software that will read PDFs too. Alright, that was a lot of information. Next thing, seems like we're always talking about the internet, but then again, the internet is a big part of technology nowadays. And we introduced the term Internet Service Provider. The Internet Service Provider at NIAC is the Iowa Communications Network. Okay? And then we did talk about this, measuring the speed in and out of here. That would be in bits per second. Bandwidth is the term. And let me just write that out. Bandwidth. A lot of times measured in bits per second. More on that here in a little bit. Alright, so then we talked about networks. We got a PC in the room. You might have a smartphone in your room. Smartphone is sending a signal to an access point in the room, and that actually comes in the main campus. The PC comes through our academic area and here. We also talked about servers up here. Those servers would have storage, and from different PCs in the room you can access that storage. Just at the main college, I think the students said you have the H drive, in which you can store things on the H drive. So that's our hard drives sitting in some servers there on campus. And then again, we can from here go out, access the internet, maybe go to Google, and then from Google bring the information back. Alright. What do we transfer that through? Either through wire, wireless, or fiber. Now we gave one example of wireless, Wi-Fi, connect through the air, but there's also a way to connect your phone to a service provider through your data plan. Okay? We talk more about that later on. But the media, it's typically these three things. It's either going through wire, wireless, or fiber, or in most cases a combination. If the network deals with the same geographical area, pretty much being under the control of one particular company, business, or whatever, it's a LAN. For example, here, everything in here at the campus, this is a LAN here at NIAC, whether we're connecting the dorms or the different buildings and so forth. Now, when we connect out to Google, that's a WAN. Okay, or some companies will pay a service provider to connect. Let me see here. Let's do this. Connect this cloud, and then you go through a service provider, and then you can collect this. We have a cloud in between. That would be a WAN. It's over a large geographical area. Maybe you have a business in New York, and it connects to a business in Japan or Dubai or wherever. Service provider can make that connection for you if you don't want to go through the internet. We'll learn why you wouldn't want to go through the internet later on. A lot to learn later on. So this is just a further example of what we talked about before. Canvas, they're in a cloud out on the internet. I talked about my connection from home. We come into the internet to our ISP, which is Mediacom. Amazon Web Services, they're rather big. They're also a data center. We talked about Facebook. And then we did talk about here, I mentioned this briefly before, NIAC's connected Charles City, and that creates a WAN, and they are doing that through the internet. Okay, so they have computers, and storage, and stuff over here, and they can communicate back to the main campus. I gotta keep moving. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We talked about it in class. The students did a great job. All of you did a great job of talking about change. Okay. We talked about the issue of, let me write this out a little better. We talked about grades, at least how Google approaches that. We talked about Big Eagle, Little Eagle. Okay, being able to be proud of what you stand for, hold your guns until you get new information, and then you say, whoa, yeah, I can change. Part of the thing we did talk about too is how does this relate to learning? I teach in sort of what's referred to as a flipped atmosphere. You do a lot of the students do a lot of the work on their own, things I think they can do, and then they come back in class and we work on things that are more difficult, or we try to verify or understand. So sometimes students find this pattern a little more difficult, but by the end of the year, in most cases, students like it. So you might have to be open to a little change, a little different way to approach learning. I'm going to focus on the word learning and eventually spending time talking about deep learning. Not just remembering the answers to a test, but understanding the answers to the test. And then maybe being able to apply it. Here's the big picture. So I'll use blue here. For example, NIAC can connect through the internet to Charles City. That'd be a WAN. When we connect to Google from wherever, if I'm home and I connect to Google, it's WAN. If I'm home and I go in and check some things in Canvas, that's like working with a WAN. Anytime people, let's say they're on their phone here, they go through NIAC, check their Facebook account. Okay? We talked about how important the fact is. Talked a little bit about assignments and so forth. The internet is an internetwork. It connects us to these locations, and we talked about being careful. Anybody can create a presence on the internet. Anybody. Let me just put one right here. And we'll be doing that in class. And who checks this to make sure it's of quality or accuracy or whatever? Basically nobody. There's nobody overseeing those type of things. So it's something you always need to be concerned about. That was kind of funny. It looks like it's raining something. But anyway. So I'm up here at the top. Unit 1 will be all done on Monday. And in fact, we'll get started on Unit 2 a little bit on Monday and leading into Wednesday. The first assignment, I moved the due date back, look in Canvas, project, look in Canvas. If you have questions on any of those, get a hold of me right away. Okay, so Friday we'll finish up the sections, just about all of them, and we'll talk a little bit about how we'll finish up the unit, and we'll talk a lot about that first assignment. So if you can get it, even though it's not due until Friday midnight, if you can get that first assignment posted, I'll look at it before class on Friday and we can talk about it. That's it.